welcome back to Noxcast, your Equinox News Recap Podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Hope. I'm the Managing Executive Editor of the Equinox.
I'm Chloe, the News Editor. Today we're joined by Jacob, our Sports Editor.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Jacob, if you want to start off by telling us a little bit about what you do at Sports Editor, what you can expect from sports coverage, sort of what that's like. I know you were a guest previously on Noxcast, but we have some new listeners with the new academic year, so give your little spiel.
Yeah, so I've been the sports editor now for, I think, just now over a year, and it's been a really good experience for me. My role as sports editor is I essentially come up with the stories that we're doing throughout the week and assign writers to those stories or sports recaps for the sports games around campus. And I assign all the stories. I help our sports writers kind of find sources and find angles on certain stories. And I've helped our new set of writers this semester sort of grow, and they've grown really well and provided a good backbone for me as well as the section. And further than that, I take the stories that they do and I put them all into our newspaper layout, which you can see throughout campus. And I sort of help work with them to create headlines, assign photos, or maybe assign graphics that go along with our stories. And it all comes together to sort of represent both what the athletes are doing record-wise, winning, losing, but also what they're doing in the community through philanthropy and giving back to the community. And sort of, it's not just looking at sports through the black and white of them being sports teams. It's more, we try and look at them as in their culture and what they do for the campus and what the campus does for them as well.
Yeah, it's sweet. I mean, sports is sort of its own world sometimes, but at the same time, it's like very similar to other sections. You have your mix of like event coverage, you have your newsy stories, you have the feature stories, and then you have the recaps of like events, or in this case, like games. So it's very, versatile. It's very diverse. The visuals are always really strong, and it's a great time. I've written for every section. I've written for sports a few times. I personally am the biggest fan of baseball in particular, but I can get down with pretty much, anything. So yeah, I encourage you, if you're watching, to reach out to Jacob if you're interested in writing for sports at all and sort of highlighting or looking at what our student athletes are up to, how our teams are doing in the standings, the most recent games. We always try to stay the most up to date with how we're all faring and, trying to make sure the Owls are doing the best that they're doing. So it's great stuff. But without further ado, we could just jump right into the news recap here. Our top story in news this week was sort of a more positive story. It's some good stuff that the KC Ground Services has been up to in terms of filling in potholes and doing some sidewalk maintenance. This was a piece from our photo editor, Xander, who also, this is sort of a follow-up on coverage he did the previous academic year about some of the issues on campus with the potholes and the sidewalks, and sort of how the grounds team has now addressed a good amount of those and is always sort of looking for more feedback on issues and when it comes to walkways and how they can better support that, even though there is certain issues with like a concrete shortage, for instance. But a lot of good work being done on campus and sort of a highlight of some of the work that Keene State staff is doing. So yeah.
I mean, I think it's wonderful personally. I remember when I had my grandparents here, the sidewalks were a big source of issues. They were pretty bad, and there was a lot of divots, a lot of places where people could fall. And I know especially for older people who walk campus a lot, that can be hard to just traverse the entire campus. But I think it's wonderful that they actually address those issues and fixed a lot of them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of the issues that students may bring up, to whether it's campus safety or other higher positions in the school, can be often specific and not cover a lot of students. But I feel like this is one that all students agreed on, and all students sort of can serve complaints that are all true and all happen to each and every one of us, whether we're walking down sidewalks, or I know I would drive my girlfriend's car from the Blake lot to the Winch lot a lot, and walking back or even driving through those, there'd be a bunch of bumps and a bunch of unnecessary things that not only are just annoying, but could really cause damage to people or our vehicles that we have on campus. So I feel like being proactive, especially before the winter time, before it can get crazy up here in New England, is really important for students.
Right. In terms of the news you can use aspect, I mean, what we consistently see in articles like this is people from these staff positions asking students, if you see something, say something, contact the relevant people, contact grounds. You can contact campus safety if it's a safety issue, and they'll try to get it fixed as much as they can to the extent that they can. I mean, there's certain things that are uncontrollable when it comes to supply shortages, and just the staffing that they have. But I've talked with Joe Britton, who's the head of grounds before. He's a very receptive guy. He's very on top of stuff. So, it's a part of it. If you see anything else, obviously campus is never going to be perfect, but I also think it's just good to highlight the fact that the staff here at Keene State are all doing the best that they can and trying to address concerns that students have. But with that, let's move into our region state top story now, which was a piece from the Keene Sentinel about the new Antioch University New England president. So this is a private graduate school in Keene right now at 40 Avon Street. They're leasing back out the third floor of the building that they used to own. If you don't know, for background, I did some reporting on this before, but Antioch was initially going to construct a new building where the Blake lot is currently, and there was going to be a 3-story academic building, and then plans changed, and they were possibly going to co-locate to Joslin House. Then that kind of fell through, and then Keene State co-located Granite Valley Charter, which is a public high school, instead. And now Antioch is sort of in a in-between zone. This article from the Sentinel sort of talks about the new president said that she was open to looking at other spaces in Keene to potentially go to, and that's not off the table yet for them. But, it's very relevant to Keene State in terms of, what happened before and then now sort of what's on the horizon potentially.
Yeah, and I know that we covered what happened with the Joslin House, ultimately, that we now have a charter school and high school students taking classes there, but I think it's interesting to see what's going to happen going forward. I know when I talked with Treadwell about it before her departure that she was very open to bringing more schools and different opportunities on the campus and leasing out some of our places that aren't in use, but I think it's interesting to see what's going to happen going forward.
Yeah, I can sort of just go on top of that. Like, I know we have the community college right outside of Keene already, and like you were saying, there's already people inside the Joslin House who are doing important work in terms of education. And I feel like if you can surround a college with more of that, then it's for the better. I'd rather have surrounding, whether it's businesses or whatever. I know Breeze Tees is really good with the school, and especially something like Antioch, which is like for education and strictly education, can really bolster our own sort of integrity at Keene State and make sure we're doing the right things so that we can be a good representation of those areas or of those affiliates around us. And it only makes us better. And it would only make us better if it was a part of a certain building or something around Keene State, not just a part of the city itself, something that you could associate with the college to Antioch. And I feel like a partnership or something like that could really benefit both us and them.
Yeah, I don't know if, the partnership with Keene State is totally off the table yet. I think, I saw some comments on the Facebook post for this article under the Keene Sentinel that some people were asking them to reevaluate and look at Keene State as a potential option for co-location and sort of underutilized spaces on campus. I know that there's been a lot of talk about, making the Keene State campus sort of into like an educational ecosystem. At least that's what the administration has sort of hinted at before. So definitely something to watch going forward now, especially with them having a new president. There are some interesting programs that they house there, including like dance therapy and stuff like that. So would be really curious to see what happens next with that item. But moving back into our own content here, the top story for Student Life was some coverage of Delta Phi Epsilon sororities Iris Icon event, which is an annual sort of talent show competition to fundraise for their philanthropy, or one of their philanthropies, which is for cystic fibrosis, which is a debilitating condition that many suffer from across the country. But this event is a tradition that they do every year. It's one of their biggest events, biggest fundraisers. This year they raised $762 for the event. They had some representatives from the organization come and speak at the event. And the ultimate winner of the Iris Icon was Senior Evan Parker, who's also the president of Bricolage, and we have sort of, a pretty good relationship with him as well, collaborating for like Media Org Madness and just talking in conversation. So I was personally happy to see that. It looked like the event went pretty well, and anything for a good cause, I feel like is something to celebrate.
Yeah, and I think it's great to see our sororities and fraternities just making a stance for the better on campus. And that money is really going to mean something to someone, and it's going to make a difference overall, no matter how much they ended up raising. But I think it's just great, and I love seeing them do things like this, and I hope they always do things like this.
Yeah, I think that seeing an organization like that, and I feel it often in the sports world where like the field hockey team just won the championship and basketball is usually a powerhouse. When I see like organizations or groups from a small school like Keene State and or raising almost $800 for cystic fibrosis, like showing your superpower from your school, showing your spirit, opposed to like a UNH or larger schools where we we really are going out there and giving back to the community, giving back to other groups, and empowering our school to show that we aren't this small school in Keene that only cares about itself or only cares about these certain things in its niche community. We really show ourselves and branch out to other aspects, and whether it's big bingo nights, stuff like that, that can show the spirit of the college community, I think is super beneficial.
Yeah, and it's just another one of those events that a lot of people do look forward to every year, and then they get their alumni to come out too and stuff like that. So, just really positive overall. Got some good photos from our photo editor Xander. So, awesome stuff. But moving on from student life here into our editorial this week, we had our discussion centered around Veterans Day and sort of what that means in terms of just what's the current state of services to veterans? What can we do better to support them? Because I feel like we sort of talked about as a board that there's a lot of thank you for your service. There's a lot of some discounts at restaurants and stuff, like 20% off. But when it comes to actual services, when it comes to mental health and the stigma around PTSD, when it comes to making sure that our veterans find employment when they come back to the States, making sure that they have proper housing, it's a big concern. In New Hampshire, there's at least over 100 unhoused veterans. There's the unemployment rate for veterans, at least as of 2022 data, is above that of the regular unemployment rate overall. So a lot of concerns about, are we doing enough to support our veterans when they come back outside of just saying thank you and just having the day. So I think we had a really good discussion about that.
Yeah, I remember our discussion was pretty long that night. And I think we had a lot of personal anecdotes as well, where people have seen this from their own families, have seen this experience. And it's a very serious thing with veterans. There's a lot of PTSD when you come back, and there's a lot of trauma that just never really goes addressed. And we were discussing how maybe it would be better to help address that trauma and help them work through it than just offering a discount at a restaurant, which isn't really going to help anyone in the long run. But it's just in America, we need to handle it more seriously. But in recent years, there's been a lot of steps taken to improve those conditions.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, like Chloe said, a lot of us shared a lot of anecdotal stories, and I think almost everyone, can share anecdotal stories from either friends or family that are veterans or have been affected by people who are veterans, and I think that we can share those stories as long as we want, and I think that it does empower us, or it does make us feel good, and it does make us feel like we should go out and do something when we do talk about those stories that are close to us. But I think a real impact. We know that we have stuff like a GI Bill. We know that college is either free or much cheaper for those who served in our armed forces. But a lot of these benefits don't affect people later on in their life when they're older in age, or when maybe they were in the draft and they weren't voluntarily there to serve and to see such atrocious things and to have to partake in warfare. And I think we treat a lot of veterans at face value like they're all the same. And like we all shared anecdotal stories that were all very different, all veterans are all very different. And there's not a sort of blanket way to bring their life up or to make them feel better or to help them cope with stuff that's happened in their past. It's not such a black and white thing that you can sort of just cover with all veterans. And I think that's something we all need to keep in mind, is that everyone's experience, everyone's reason, even if they weren't in the draft, everyone's reason for going was different. What happened to them was different. Their reception coming back was all different. And that's something we need to keep in mind when addressing Veterans Day and when addressing our veterans.
Yeah, and I think, we also sort of hit on the fact that unlike some of our more recent editorials, this isn't necessarily a very recent issue. This has been an issue from administration to administration, sort of the overlooking of veterans and like bureaucracy in the veterans affairs when it comes to like healthcare, when it comes to, just not having those programs to make them feel supported and make them help them to find the opportunities with jobs, help them to get connected to housing, things like that. It's been overlooked, and oftentimes they're also used as, a scapegoat when you talk about here's what the government could be doing more. People say, well, what about the homeless vets? And then you look at what other people are doing, the people that say that, they're not doing anything to help homeless vets either. So unfortunately, it's an instance where people, know it's an issue, people talk about it, but often it's used as a political weapon, which is unfortunate because these are, real people that need help, and it's been an issue for a long time, and there has been positive strides, as Chloe mentioned. Certainly we're in a better place than before in many respects, but trying not to regress, trying to go forward and always improve. Something that we like to do with our editorials is to make sure that these issues don't fall out of the public conscience, because when it comes to Veterans Day, a lot of people see it as another day off, and it really shouldn't be. You should be able to enjoy yourself, of course, but to also be able to appreciate what those who have served for us have done, we thought was important to emphasize. With that being said, though, let's segue into our arts and entertainment top story. This is a fun one. It's about music professor Dr. Dan Carberg and his award-winning and finalist burger. It's called the Middle Eastern Money Burger, named after one of his friends who has the last name Money. And the Middle Eastern aspect is because there's elements of Middle Eastern cuisine in the burger. It was a finalist in the World Food Championship, which is basically the Culinary Olympics, as some enthusiasts call it. He was one of the only home chefs, I believe, in the competition, and it's sort of just an interesting story. I mean, you don't really expect your music professor to also be a very skilled chef at the same time, at the competitive level even. So I thought it was a pretty fun story. Within the story, also, I encourage you to check out either the print version or the online version, because we got the whole recipe for the Middle Eastern Money Burger. He was gracious enough to give us the recipe, and it's a very interesting take. It's kind of an involved recipe for a burger, but I'm curious to maybe try it at some point if I get the ingredients. It's just a wild story.
I think it was a really fun story. I know we've been talking about this for a little bit now, and it's wild. I definitely agree with that. But it's wild in a great way. And I love that the recipe is included. I think that's absolutely an amazing touch to the article. And just everything about it is just so fun and so unexpected, especially from the A&E section, but it's great.
Oh yeah, there's another story in the A&E section about Professor Mike Wakefield, and I know he has a large history in jazz music, and he used to be in a band, and he's shown us his own music, and to me and all of us were like, that's crazy, that's cool. And then you take your music teacher and then have him enter a worldwide food competition. I feel like that's another step up where you're like, holy crap, this is a real sort of, I guess you could say Batman Bruce Wayne type of thing, where you never know what your professors are doing, and something that gracious is super cool, and something that second place for a burger. When I read the article, he even said he started picking up cooking, I believe it was during the pandemic in 2020, where he really started to get into it, and something where you could, although he has a passion for teaching, he developed this passion for cooking, and he applied it well and had a lot of success. And I agree, the recipe in there is very notable. It's an award-winning burger, so if you want to recreate it, you can.
Yeah, definitely. And I also have to take a chance to plug the fact that we found out about this because Dr. Carberg submitted the request through our story submission request form, which can be found at the bottom of our website, ksequinox.com. If you have a story request or you think there's something that we should be covering that we're not right now, go to that forum and let us know. We're always open to suggestions, and we do follow up on what is submitted to that forum. So I encourage you to check it out if you have anything for us. But with that being said, we're going to round it off here with our top story in sports. Another one from our sports staffer, Frank, who covered the field hockey LEC championship. This is sort of a merge of the semifinal game and the final game, along with some quotes from player and then also the head coach talking about their back-to-back LEC championship. I got to say this is a really gripping article in terms of how it talks about it, particularly the semifinal game went into overtime, really painting the picture of what that was like. I mean, what a crazy game to sort of advance to that final level. And then, of course, top it off with a championship win. The last of, head coach Amy Watson's storied career in the program. So really good stuff. And we also were able to make a cool little layout with a contributed picture from Little East Conference with the players, sort of with the banner and all that stuff. So very cool stuff all around.
Yeah, and all of our top stories for sports these last few weeks have been really solid, I feel, and it was great coverage from Frank as well. Everything in our sports section has just been really positive. I know that we haven't had anything negative to say, and it's all been just really nice to top it off at the very end of each podcast, but I think it was just a great story, and it was a great coverage by Frank.
Yeah, we as sports writers joke all the time, and Frank and I were joking specifically with this game that if you're writing a recap, often, depending on how good the game is, depends on how good your recap is. And you really never talk about how a semifinal game is more exciting than your championship game. I mean, under the lights, cold night in November, and you go into overtimes, and then you go into shootout for your season. And I can't think of a more crazy atmosphere. Like Nate talked about, Coach Watson's last season. You have all this buildup from also the success of past field hockey teams. A lot of these seniors and upperclassmen were on these successful teams. So you have a lot riding on this, what turned into a shootout for your season. And they came out on top, and I think Frank did a really good job. He was there, got the quote from Coach Watson. And I think that really showed. And you had also not a lackluster championship game, but it was only 1-0. And that was just sort of Frank and I talked to the players. They really showed that, like, after they had won that shootout, nothing could hurt them. Going into that championship game, there was no real pressure on them. They had just won arguably the biggest game of the season right there in the semi game. And then you go into the championship game with all that energy after the night win in overtime, and they delivered well. And I mean, they've always been successful. I can't say enough about how good our field hockey team is, and it's going to be tough to see Coach Watson go, but I think the players commented on it, and I think so too. There can't be a better way to go out of a coaching career than that.
I mean, yeah, what a team, what a program, what a game. I mean, there's so much to be said about it. I kind of wish that we had a documentary team following them the whole season, because what a like storybook narrative that kind of played into. But a fantastic article and retelling of sort of, what capped off their season. But with that being said, that's the end of our recap this week. So as always, I would like to extend a special shout out to the composer of the music for Noxcast, our very own Equinox alum, Zach Keenan, as well as the creator of the graphic for Noxcast, our very own art director, Elijah Fisher, and the editor of Noxcast, our very own multimedia director, Noelle Hisgen. Until next time, I've been Nathan Owen, and thanks for watching.